We live in an age where we are being fed content and information by an algorithm or algorithms all the time. I know what you're thinking. We've heard this all before. I'm probably going to go into a rant about the social media companies or something like that. Don't worry, I'm not going to do that. I just wanted to make the point to recognize that we do live in an algorithmic world and we are being fed information all the time. And that information is going to be particular to us, our beliefs, our maybe religious beliefs, our worldviews, our politics. All of these things influence the information that we receive. So we live in a world where one situation can look completely different depending on the information that you are being fed on that subject. Now, I want to go a layer deeper in this video than just looking at that kind of surface level analysis of living in this algorithmic world, to think about what part of who we are is that content, most of the content that we are consuming speak to, and what can we do about it to make sure that we are continuing to be good human beings. I would say one thing that we're very good at in our day and age today is actually blaming other people for things. We blame the social media platforms or this particular content creator or that other group of people that have this abhorrent view to us, or a political party that we don't agree with. We're very good at being offended and having an opinion on things. And I think sometimes it's good to turn the mirror on ourselves and say, wait, how is this forming me? And how can I be the kind of person that I want to see in the world? So I want to look at C.S. Lewis's book, The Abolition of Man, and a particular concept that he talks about in there, which is the concept of, for his context, he was writing about modern education. And he was saying that modern education was becoming more and more subjective, so removing objective morality or objective truth. And I would say that since Lewis's day, that has only continued in many ways. And he said that what that produces is men without chests. And when Lewis uses the word men, he was a man of his time, writing at a particular time in history, but he's referring to all of humanity. So I'm going to have a little read from this book here, where he lays out what he means by the chest and men without chest, and the three different parts of the human for this particular framework that he's laying out. The head rules the belly through the chest. So they're the three elements: the head, the belly, and the chest. The seat, as Alanis tells us, of magnanimity, of emotions organized by trained habit into stable sentiments. That part there, emotions organized, so emotions aren't bad things, but they do need to be organized and put in their proper place by trained habit and into stable sentiments. So your emotions actually can be an indication of objective reality, Lewis is saying here, and they can be turned into a virtue, something that you take as a principle for your life. But it takes trained habits to make sure that those emotions are organized into the proper place. So we might think of someone who I've referenced on the channel before, James K. Smith here, and his understanding of what he calls cultural or even sacred liturgies, things that are forming and shaping us by our bodily practices in ways that we might not always even realize. So Lewis goes on, the chest, magnanimity, sentiment, these are the indispensable liaison officers between cerebral man and visceral man. It may even be said that it is by this middle element that man is man, for by his intellect he is mere spirit, and by his appetite mere animal. This connects to my series of videos on Gnosticism that I recently did, where the Gnostics would say that pure spirit is actually the goal, and maybe you could say a naturalist framework, a kind of atheistic, naturalistic worldview would say that the natural or physical world is all there is. And the integrating factor, Lewis is saying, is the chest that brings cerebral man and visceral man together as one unified, integrated human being. In other words, the chest is the bridge between what we know and what we desire. The chest integrates those two things. And I think we need to recognize that much of the content that we engage with on social media is either trying to form our head, give us information, knowledge about things, but not necessarily the means to embody that knowledge, or it's just speaking to our desires, and sometimes the most animalistic desires that are part of us as human beings. And so maybe sometimes a way to solve the world's problems is actually to start with ourselves and to recognize that we are the gatekeepers of our algorithm. We are the gatekeepers of our own mind. And we can go out of our way to seek information that might give us another perspective. That's a great place to start. But deeper than that, we can also recognize that this content is forming us in particular ways, and usually only two particular ways. One of the things that I hope I can do with this channel is to speak to your chest, to speak to that part of you that allows you to think about the world and open up to different ways of seeing reality, but ultimately to becoming an integrated human being whose opinions and thoughts and abstractions are integrated with your desires, the deepest part of who you are, and who has principles that you live by so that you can be in the world in a way that makes sense. I'm going to do one more quote from Lewis here that kind of shows us the predicament that we find ourselves in. And all the time, such is the tragicomedy of our situation, we continue to clamour for those very qualities we are rendering impossible. You can hardly open a periodical without coming across the statement that what our civilization needs is more drive, or dynamism, or self-sacrifice, or creativity. In a sort of ghastly simplicity, we remove the organ and demand the function. We make men without chests and expect of them virtue and enterprise. We laugh at honour and are shocked to find traitors in our midst. We castrate and bid the geldings be fruitful. I think that this is, if anything, more true today than the days that Lewis found himself living in. But I don't want it to end with us saying, oh, look at the world that we've inherited. It's awful. But we can do something about this. And I want to offer some practices that I think can help us build our chest to become people of chest again, that have our head, our knowledge and our desire in our belly integrated once more. And I think that these practices need to be things that aren't necessarily always directly influencing those two other elements that Lewis is laying out here. So some things, just to list them, would be walking around in nature or just being out in nature. Reading poetry, I think, is another great way of doing this. I would also say that reading myths and stories that give us a grand narrative to step into and open us up to these massive virtues and show us how we can embody them. There's a reason that the hero is always the one you would least expect to be a hero. It's to show us that you can be this kind of hero in the world that you live in as well. And then finally, I would say practicing paying attention to things, noticing what is going on. When you're in a conversation with someone, really seeing and understanding what they're talking about, or when you're on that walking nature, seeing and looking around at the different plants and animals that you might see. So I wanted to make this video as a way of a kind of carrion call of like, we can be the change that we want to see in the world. And we can do it on this platform, I do believe that. But it takes us being the gatekeepers of our minds, of our chests, if you like, and of our algorithm. And so I hope that some insight from C.S. Lewis has inspired you to be a person that has this integrating factor inside of you. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again for another video soon.